Joining us right now is James O'Keefe of Project Veritas, and he's just teased earlier today there are more CNN tapes that are coming. James, this is excellent work again. You're doing like real investigative journalism. It's not shocking, but it is shocking when you hear some of these tapes, like how they were trying to cover up the Hunter Biden story, some of the racial things that they've said as well. Tell me about this and 2 months of tapes.
Yeah, Dana, I think the defecation thing, I've heard that a few times when I called in there and I said, "Hi, it's James. How are you?" You could hear, you could just hear the emotion. He was like, "Oh, well, I think we have to change the system." He didn't even hang up the phone. He just kept talking as if he was being recorded by me, live streaming this. We had some racial comments here by CNN Vice President David Chalian saying that Cubans are attracted to bullies just because of their ethnicity. It's funny. That's ironic because they come from a country that actually had a bully as a dictator. You had comments about how it's obvious that we're not going to cover anything related to Hunter Biden. So the CEO of CNN saying, obviously we wouldn't cover that. I don't know what's obvious about what is it a political obviousness? I don't understand that. And we've decided that we're going to basically release, like an Advent calendar. It's December 2nd, December 3rd. Every day we're going to release a tape until Christmas. So, for your audience, it's Christmas season. So we're going to give you a raw phone call of Jeff Zucker talking to his colleagues each day, every day, starting this Friday all the way to December 25th. And we've recorded over 50 of these conversations. Every morning at 9 a.m., the president of CNN talks to his staff tells them what to cover, tells them what not to cover. And it doesn't shock you because it more confirms your suspicion, but yet it's still shocking when you can hear it with your own ears.
Yeah, and that's a great way, by the way, to kick off the Christmas season. And that's a great Christmas gift, too. We're talking with James O'Keefe of Project Veritas. So you mentioned, because you have the CNN head, Jeff Zucker, talking to all these reporters, and it's customary for networks to have these editorial meetings and to get on conference calls and hash out stories. But what isn't customary, at least for the so-called free press, is to discuss from an advocate perspective why they're not going to cover certain stories. And, you mentioned, and we're talking about how while it doesn't really surprise us, what impact do you think that this has on individuals as far as the reality of media being advocates and not really the free press any longer?
The whole idea here of journalism is that you're supposed to operate without fear or favor. That's the quote that they say at the New York Times or the Financial Times. Without fear or favor, you're independent. You have some modicum of independence. Now, at Project Veritas, I am the CEO. We have over 50 employees and a couple dozen reporters, but I don't tell them what they can't cover or what they can't find. I don't say don't find that information. Whereas Zucker on the call, as the president of a conglomerate news organization, says that you're a national security threat if you talk about voter fraud. So it runs contrary to the whole notion of journalism. It's like he's in the news suppression business, as opposed to in the discovery business and the enlightenment business. And the whole idea of a country, a republic, our whole republic was founded on the public's right to know. In order for people to exercise their rights and duties, they have to be informed. In fact, that informed information constitutes the nature of our consent. The consent of the governed. And that consent cannot be manufactured. So the fact that we have, quote, the most trusted name in news with a president who's more of like an ESPN game show person or something, telling everyone what not to cover, what not to focus on, in that way, it really runs contrary to what and what I've learned, Dana, is that this whole idea of projection, it's like what the mentally ill do. They project onto you and I what they do. What they're doing is closer to what they accuse us of doing, right? What they do is selectively edit. What they do is they're very political and they get marching orders from a political party. People like myself, people like you, or people like Sean Hannity are very much more independent than how they're branded. So there's this whole idea of accusing me of what they're doing. And on these phone calls, you can hear it for yourself. That's why Jeff Zucker is upset at me. That's why he's calling the police, threatening me that I broke the law, because he's just mad and embarrassed. and people lash out when they go through those types of emotions.
Yeah, and that's I don't see how any kind of wiretapping law would provide any sort of legal basis for their challenge at all whatsoever. These phone calls, we're talking to James O'Keefe, who for 2 months was surreptitiously, and he was given consent because he was given the number to call in, listening to these CNN editorial discussions. At any point, James, did anybody, any of the reporters, any of the producers, anybody else on the call ever challenge Jeff Zucker or any of the other executives at CNN about their direction?
That's the other thing, Dana. Good point. No, they were all yes men, and it was shocking to see nobody push back on Zucker. It was like my people push back on me all the time. Where would I be without my team? I mean, I don't enter a call saying, here's what we need to do. That people come up to me and they say, here's what we're seeing. And I might ask questions about that, but nobody pushes back against Zucker on these calls. People are yes men. They're taking direction. They're taking marching orders. They're focused on narrative. In fact, one of the individuals on the call, one of the executives, talked about 9/11 and how the transition needs to happen quicker so another terrorist attack doesn't happen, which is contrary to what happened in 2000 with Gore. They're talking about 9/11 attacks being precipitated. So, you have a political narrative and a kind of a party line. There's another quote where one of the individuals says that we are being told they are telling us not to focus on anything that Trump is saying or focus on his lack of concession. This is now a month ago, right around the election time. So they are the political interests, the special interests, the party power brokers that are telling the network vice presidents and presidents of CNN what to do and what not to do. There's a kind of symbiotic relationship between the powers that be and the powers that be at network news. And again, it's very contrary to any type of journalism that I'm aware of, and it's in fact exactly what they accuse me of being, which is a staple of a political party or a political interest. And I want to expose this for who they are, and of course the psychological aspect here of how terrifying it is to them that we have recorded all these calls, and I think that they're more embarrassed at being caught than practicing any introspection about being better.
Yeah. Well, and I like how you also James puts the warnings up on his Twitter account too. You mentioned earlier, and I didn't want to let this go, how it was CNN's official, like their verified PR account, which is also incredibly bizarre that it's almost kind of run like somebody's personal account. Where right after you announced these tapes and you published the first tape of this, they said, "Oh well, we've contacted law enforcement," as though there was something that they could do about that, because that's not. I mean, I was looking at New York wiretapping laws, and it's a conference call, and they really don't have anything to do. But what gets me is, James, did they or did they not? They were the ones who released the Melania tapes, correct? They were the ones who had the FLOTUS tapes.
That's a great point, Dana. They do surreptitious recording. They have sources that surreptitiously tape. They released the audio tape of Melania. There's that guy in California who is I can't remember his name, but the guy who ran the Clippers basketball team who surreptitiously was recorded in California, which is a two-party state to record. This is not about journalism ethics. We didn't break any laws, or we'll happily litigate that if we absolutely need to, and we have not lost one lawsuit. By the way, Dana, you know who has lost lawsuits? CNN.
Yeah.
With the Covington kids, incident, they settled defamation lawsuit. I've never settled a defamation lawsuit in my life, nor has Project Veritas. So these legal experts at CNN saying that we may have broken the law, our legal experts, tell me that they're full of crap, and we have a better track record. So it's not about journalism ethics, Dana. It's simply about projection and more of the same. But I do believe, and I'm going to make this pitch to you like I always do, that this is changing things, that these insiders inside these companies, these brave people, are sending to Veritas tips at protonmail.com, which is how we found out about this. We got a tip, we got a person who is someone who's disgusted, and they're not betraying their organization. They're actually trying to be loyal to what their organization is supposed to stand for. And we have to remember why these institutions exist. We are nothing without being informed. Our government derives its powers from an informed citizenry. And if CNN is working with Google and Facebook, if Facebook and Google are working with USA Today and the New York Times, and they are colluding together, then these organizations are even more, unfortunately, more powerful than even you and I would like to admit. They have that power. And that's why it's just as important to blow the whistle on CNN as it is to blow the whistle on the FBI or the State Department or, your school board. In many ways, these organs are the most powerful interests in the world, even more powerful than all three branches of government, which is why this brave person who worked with us, did the right thing. And I hope many of you who are watching inside of your own organizations that see this sort of malfeasance reach out to us at VeritasTips@protonmail.com.
There you go. James O'Keefe, you made a great point just then as well about these individuals they're prioritizing their practice and the principle of free press over the personality of a network. And it's going to be very interesting next several years as I think cable news shifts and people start going and looking to organizations like yours for the truth and investigative reporting. Project Veritas, James O'Keefe. James, as always, carrying the torch. Appreciate what you do. God bless you, my friend.
Well, thank you, Dana. Talk to you very soon.